Today, we're diving into the Australian housing market, which has been doing something pretty wild. It's not just recovering, it's accelerating at a pace that's catching everyone by surprise. So, get this. Back in October 2025, Aussie home values shot up by 1.1%. Now, that might not sound like a huge number, but hold on. That's actually the fastest we've seen prices grow in a single month in over 2 years. And what does that 1.1% actually mean in dollars and cents? It means over $10,000 was slapped onto the median home value across the capital cities in just 1 month. Just incredible. Okay, so what on earth kicked off this sudden surge in momentum? Well, to really get it, you've got to look at the timeline. If you rewind to the end of 2024, the market was actually cooling off. Values were kind of flat, even dropping in some places. But then February 2025 hits, bam, the first interest rate cut. That was the turning point. Ever since, the market's just been picking up speed, which brings us to the rapid growth we're seeing today. And it's not just us saying that. Tim Lawless, the research director over at CoreLogic, he pointed right to that moment. He called it a clear turning point that completely changed the game for the whole market. But interest rates were the spark, not the whole fire. The real engine behind this whole boom is a classic case of simple economics. It really boils down to this. Way more people want to buy houses than there are houses for sale. I mean, home sales are up more than 3% compared to the 5-year average. But get this, the number of homes actually on the market, it's down a whopping 18% from that same average. So what happens when you have a flood of buyers and only a trickle of sellers? Well, the sellers are in the driver's seat, for sure. And that mismatch is exactly what's pushing these prices through the roof. Okay, so that's the big picture nationally. But this isn't a one-size-fits-all situation. Let's zoom in and see how this is playing out city by city, because the story really changes depending on where you look. So yeah, every single capital city saw prices go up in October, but some are just on another level. We're talking about Perth, Brisbane, and Darwin. They're really out in front, leading the charge with the biggest monthly jumps. And if you look at the whole year, Perth and Brisbane are the real superstars. Their growth is hitting or even passing 10%. That's not just a blip. That's some serious sustained momentum right there. But then there's Darwin. Wow. Darwin is in a league of its own. When you combine the price growth with high rental yields, it has delivered a staggering 23.1% total return in just 1 year. I mean, that figure is just unbelievable in today's market. So what's interesting is where this growth is happening. It's not all at the super high-end luxury end of the market. Nope. The biggest gains are actually in the more affordable, the lower and middle parts of the market. And there are a few reasons for this. First, it's getting harder to borrow huge sums of money, what they call serviceability constraints. So that's pushing buyers towards cheaper options. At the same time, you've got a ton of investor activity. And on top of that, more first home buyers are jumping in, thanks to government schemes that let them buy with a smaller deposit. All right, so the market is red hot. No doubt about it. But, and this is a big but, this whole boom is sailing right into some pretty serious economic headwinds. And that's where the story starts to get a lot more complicated. Which leads to the big question, right? Can this actually keep going? Because there are some major challenges looming on the horizon that make you wonder about what's next. So what are we talking about? Well, for starters, there's inflation making a comeback. That could mean the party's over for rate cuts. Then there's the massive problem of housing affordability, which is just getting worse. And there's always the risk that the regulators might step in and make it harder for investors to get loans. Let's dig into that affordability problem for a second, because it's a real catch-22. The crazy thing is, the market's growth is basically eating the very thing that was supposed to help buyers. Okay, so on one side of the coin, those rate cuts since February, they gave the average household an extra $51,000 in borrowing power. Great, right? Well, here's the other side. During that exact same time, the median home price shot up by almost $54,000. So, poof, that extra borrowing power, it's gone, completely wiped out. And according to Tim Lawless again, don't hold your breath for more help. He says the rate-cutting cycle is probably over, so we're not going to see another big material boost to borrowing power anytime soon. And the last piece of this puzzle is, who's actually buying? Right now, investors make up a huge chunk of the market, about 38% of new mortgages, which is higher than usual. And why does that matter? Because if the government decides to tighten the rules for them, that could pour a lot of cold water on this hot market really fast. So that's where we are. Australia's housing market is caught in this massive tug of war. On one side, you have this incredible momentum, tons of demand, not enough houses. On the other side, you've got these huge economic pressures and affordability that's just stretched to the limit. The real question isn't just about which side will win, it's about what happens when these two forces collide. Which one is going to pull harder?